It's Truth Over Fear, and the truth will set you free. I want to talk about Pope Innocent III, King James, and the Holy Roman Church, the Vatican, and how it all relates to commerce and the taking of our spirituality and our God-given rights. In the 12th century, King James, a Catholic monarch, found himself on Pope Innocent III's bad boy list, which resulted in the sovereign monarch being excommunicated by the Vatican, or the Holy Roman Church. First, you must understand that King James could barely read or write, and contrary to popular opinion, royalty and competence have never been synonymous. Now, in order to regain the favor of the Pope, King James was duped in offering a great many concessions to the Holy Roman Church. One concession in particular was to grant Pope Innocent III his royal permission to edit the Holy Christian Bible. And as a result of his intervention, 8 Gospels were eliminated or lost, and many other Gospels were purloined. King James never publicly disclosed Pope Innocent's intervention, and he eventually revealed to his subjects the only authorized version of the Holy Christian Bible, which most Christians refer to as the King James Version. In the 18th century, at the Treaty of Verona, high contracting European powers, the European cabal, applauded the Pope and his successful efforts to make Christians more docile. All the members present agreed that a free press and any republican form of government was detrimental to their cause, and the Pope pledged that the Church would continue to do all it can in this cause. And just to let you guys know, I'm reading this excerpt titled Secrets of America by Judge Dale. He's a judge that retired early, figured out what was going on within the ranks, and wanted no part of it. He goes on to say, I cannot positively identify which Gospels were purloined by the Pope. I can only guarantee that it did occur from his confession. I am familiar with 2 of the 8 books the Pope had removed, and they were the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of Thomas. In the Gospel of Thomas, the disciple reveals that Christ taught, the kingdom of God is within you, and not in the wood and stone of your buildings. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Turn over a stone, and there you will find me. Certainly, Pope Innocent III had to eliminate the Gospel of Thomas. How could the Holy Roman Church justify its opulence, comfort, and wealth with words like these in the Holy Bible? The Gospel of Mary Magdalene is pretty much a given when one considers how the purloined version of the Holy Bible and the Holy Roman Church defiles her. In the Gospel of Mary, Mary reveals her marriage to Jesus. Remember the wedding wherein Christ turned water into wine? Well, according to Mary Magdalene, that is described as their wedding, and Mary the mother was in charge of the reception and had underestimated the quantity of food and wine. Mary Magdalene further discloses that during the crucifixion of Christ, Jesus reportedly cried out, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The purloined version of the Holy Christian Bible certainly offers a less pretentious version, synonymous to docility. Certainly Pope Innocent III had to eliminate the Gospel of Mary as well, since it contradicted 1. the Pope's efforts to make Christians more docile, and 2. the tenets decided at the Council of Nicaea. At the Council of Nicaea, it was decided by the Roman pagan priests that Christ must be treated as a living God, and since gods are devoid of the usual human traits, such as intercourse and marriage, All priests must emulate the Christ and are forbidden to elope. Secondly, it was agreed at Nicaea that Christ may forgive and bless a prostitute who has repented like Mary Magdalene, but he would never become associated with such a woman. What obtuse and hypocritical thinking. At the seminary, priestly candidates are even taught how to flex their hand when conducting a blessing, so to better emulate the closest memories and the most famous paintings of Jesus. The Bible in its present form encourages Christians to be dull, docile, and overly forgiving and tolerant of others in all situations. According to the Gospel of Mary, Christ never intended nor expected that for Christians. Also, the other 6 books of the Bible that Pope Innocent helped to eliminate revealed a history about ET visitors with incredible powers, which probably revealed too much information about the foundation of religion, or these 6 Gospels were so far above the Pope's intellect and comprehension that he couldn't make any sense of them. That's just one man's opinion. I had this thought, which I cannot confirm or deny, and I'll only offer this to you, purely out of speculation. Given the unusual pregnancy of Mary of Nazareth, and the unusual talents and abilities of her child named Jesus Christ, it may have been very possible that extraterrestrial visitors who frequented the earth, equipped with a highly developed level of science, fulfilled God's plan by artificially inseminating his chosen subject, Mary of Nazareth, with a most unique clone seed. It is documented that during his early years, Christ would frequently disappear for extended periods of time, and when confronted about his disappearances, his explanation was always that he was either meditating or he was doing his Father's work. Very little has ever been written or discovered about Jesus Christ during those teenage years, which might be because during those long disappearances, Christ was actually being educated and his mental and physical prowess was increasingly being enhanced by his mentors. There are so many unanswered questions about our past, and frankly I never would have considered or offered the above speculation if not for various pieces of information and detail that have voluntarily been intimated to me by legitimate individuals over the past 30 years. A videotape of the crucifixion of Christ, viewed by a former U.S. president of my age group, and existing treaties between the United States and 3 extraterrestrial civilizations, which permits the periodic abduction and testing of American citizens and the construction of underground bases in exchange for technology and even an astronaut exchange program, the creation of tens of thousands of underground cities and miles of connecting corridors, and space mining, space bases, and transporters called stargates, just to name a few. The Holy Roman Church. Catholics have always been prohibited from questioning the Pope and the precepts of the Church for a very good reason, which will be explained as you read on. All popes and privately owned corporate Holy Roman Church have always been a major player in shaping world politics, governments, commerce, and mines since the early Roman Empire and continues to do so to this date. The Roman Church was originally a pagan church and remained so under Roman Emperor Constantine. The advent or appearance of Jesus Christ and his new Christian religious movement called Christianity, and the religious wars that ensued caused Emperor Constantine to rethink his position as the pagan emperor of Rome. So upon the orders of Constantine at the Council of Nicaea, the pagan priests of the Roman Church were ordered to begin the difficult and tasteless task of attempting to blend Christianity and paganism together to create one church to be called the Holy Roman Church. Christ was an unusual man and prophet with some typical human traits, and at the Council of Nicaea, the pagan priests decided that Christ must be perceived as a living God, and as a living God, any suggestion or possibility that Christ took a spouse must be removed from the scriptures, and thereafter priests were forbidden to marry. The Holy Roman Church actually remained more pagan than Christian Emperor Constantine would eventually submit to what he considered to be the indignity of baptism just months before his natural death. Historians for the Vatican made certain that Constantine would be depicted as a reformed man and Christian emperor, but that was not exactly accurate or true. No, the pagan influence in the Holy Roman Church explains the outward discrepancies between the organization of the Church and the Holy Scriptures, such as ostentatious buildings and religious garb, idol worship, purgatory, exorcisms, excommunications, saints, demons, the hoarding of wealth and antiquities, which always existed in the ancient pagan cult. Most people do not know that there are two popes. The white pope is responsible for administration of the Holy Roman Church, and the black pope is a Jesuit and mercenary, and is responsible for eliminating people and problems affecting the church with extreme prejudice. The Vatican today is a privately owned, corporate, money-driven, and self-interested religious cult. It is a front for the Italian P2 Masonic Lodge or Illuminati, which is routinely involved in murder for hire, gambling, pedophile sex, and white slavery. Vatican City is one of the three privileged and autonomous city-states, which also coordinates elite pan-American global organized crime for the Western banking cabal. The other two city-states are Washington, D.C. and the City of London. The Holy Roman Church has become identified as the center of the world's spiritual leadership. The City of London has become identified as the center of world finance, and Washington, D.C. has become identified as the center of world military power. All three are inseparable in philosophy and yet separate corporate centers in their own right. Vatican City is immune from Italian law. London is immune from British law. Washington, D.C. is immune from state law. And all three are collectively the unified center of a secret society and criminal cabal called the Illuminati, and their headquarters is the United Nations building in New York City, the proposed capital city for their New World Order. Proof of both the United Nations and the City of New York can be located in the United States Code. During World War II, the hierarchy of the Vatican freely supported the Nazi program for world domination, and Pope Pius XII personally rendered his blessing upon Adolf Hitler, Baron Rothschild. As mentioned before during this expose, King George eventually gained control over the new government of America, but he did not lay any new claim to colonial land because of another treaty entered into his predecessor, King James, in 1213. The Treaty of 1213 was between King James and Pope Innocent III of the Holy Roman Church. Google the Treaty of 1213 and read it for yourself. Like most historic kings, King James was not an intelligent man and was easily manipulated by Pope Innocent III. King James had been excommunicated by the Holy Roman Church because having given his royal assent to an aristocratic document titled the Magna Carta, which is part recognized the dukes and lords and sovereigns, and which prevented the return of their estates to the king upon their death. King James had been forced into signing this document to avert a rebellion. James also realized that the Magna Carta would now deprive him of his income on those estates and their resale upon the death of the dukes and lords, so he invoked an ancient law he remembered titled the Law of Mortmain, or the Dead Man's Hand, which established the basis of the current probate courts in America. Probate provides for a tax or percentage of the decedent's estate be paid to the king upon the distribution of a dead man's estate and the failure to pay his tax, resulted in the ownership in the estate being sold by the court to pay the tax, and absent a valid last will and testament, the estate is returned to the king. In America, the same laws apply and the estate is returned to the state. The Magna Carta and the Law of Mortmain upset Pope Innocent III because it placed the lords and dukes in equal footing with the sovereign king and his holiness. The Pope, the Law of Mortmain, prevented Catholic parishioners from willing the deeds to their homes and land to the church by obligating the church to pay the king's probate tax. Pope Innocent III retaliated by excommunicating King James, and he also issued a decree declaring that the Magna Carta was an effort or an affront to God and the Holy Roman Church, and therefore was unlawful. King James was eventually convinced by Pope Innocent III that because of his excommunication, that upon the king's death, his soul would be condemned to purgatory. Out of his fear of purgatory, King James made a serious act of contrition to regain the favor of the Holy Roman Church and the Pope, whom the king now regarded as God's only living representative on earth. The Treaty of 1213 spelled out King James' concessions. 1. Giving the land titles of Ireland, England, and France to the Holy Roman Church. 2. The lands and oceans of the earth. And 3. The payment of 1,000 gold marks each year. And 4. A royal decree which declared the Pope the Vicar of Christ, meaning the only living descendant of Peter, Christ's appointed representative on earth. Note, all royalty is an historic pre-verification, but man has accepted their presence like a bad government. Devout Christians might argue this point, but realistically, somebody has to be in charge. whomever they are, to maintain order and organize protection from other nations. The Holy Roman Church and all future popes would all pursue other avenues to gain similar treaties and control around the world, which is much easier to accomplish if you are the vicar of Christ. And this does, however, explain England's historic thirst to conquer other countries around the world. King James' royal decree that all the lands and seas of earth was the property of the Holy Roman Church eventually became the impetus behind the change in American land titles from allodial deeds to fee simple deeds, which utilizes the ancient Roman trusts as a model. The ancient Roman trusts, remember the story about crazy Nero setting fire to Rome? Well, it happened, but he wasn't crazy. He and the Roman Senate arranged that one and blamed it on the Christians as a distraction. Problem is that the fires were predominantly set in the Christian section. So what was behind this? After the fires had burned out, the Roman Senate created a land trust, and into the trust they entered all the estates of Romans who owned property. Then by royal decree they declared that all these properties' owners had died in the Great Fire, and the Senate was appointed the trustees and these estates. As trustees, they could demand a percentage of the crops and excessive taxes. If the owner couldn't pay, he went to prison or surrendered his daughters as bond slaves. If the original owner died, the estate was sold, usually to a member of the Senate, and the gold held in the trust. All that the original estate owner had to do was stop this insanity, was to hire a scribe and decree that he did not die in the Great Fire and was in fact alive and quite capable of managing his own estate, and serve it on the Senate. Few Romans were intelligent enough to know what to do and subsequently lost everything. All land deeds in colonial America used to be allodial deeds, which recognize our individual sovereignty and ownership, whereas fee simple deeds only recognizes the state and are an open-end deed that are never closed or finalized. What does this mean, you ask? Allodial recognizes you as the king of your land. You make the rules on your land, and nobody and no government can trespass upon your property. You, the king, are revered and respected and have an absolute right to use lethal force to protect your property. No government can tax your land, and the title is passed down from parent to child or husband to wife, etc. No bank will ever lend money against an allodial property because the bank has no way to foreclose against it, but it will lend money against your chattel, livestock, or crops. Fee simple recognizes you only as tenant on the property. The state makes the rules on your land, and anybody can trespass upon your property. You actually lease the property from the land trust, which belongs to the Holy Roman Church. The deed can only be passed down to family members upon your death, but not before your descendants open an estate in probate, which means that the state receives a percentage of everything the decedent once owned. If the descendants are short of cash, the property is auctioned off, or a loan mortgage can be obtained from the bank. In a loan situation, the deed to the property is encumbered by the bank. This means that the bank is entitled to be satisfied first. If the loan mortgage is defaulted on for non-payment, this process is better known as foreclosure. The banks have arranged for the Vatican, the judge, the clerk, the bank, and the lawyer to each receive a piece of the foreclosure. If you are unmarried and you fail to leave a last will and testament, the state can reclaim your property and leave your descendants with nothing. With this change in deeds, a land trust was created for these fee simple deeds, and the Holy Roman Church was designated the owner of the trust. The state and the courts become the trustees. We as Americans become corporate tenant. Now here's where things get sticky. In every trust, there is an owner, a trustee, and a beneficiary. The owner cannot be trustee, neither of them can become the beneficiary. So we ignorant human beings have been appointed as the beneficiaries of the trust. Into the trust, they have entered other valuable property. Birth certificates of corporations, our birth certificates, and our Social Security accounts, which are converted into national securities and marketed as mutual fund investments. The trick is how to avoid giving these ignorant humans the benefits of the trust, and the solution arrived at by these lawyer politicians is to convert those ignorant humans into sub-corporations. Corporations are companies, and as such have no inalienable rights. You got to admit that these people are clever. Americans who believe they have just purchased a home and have land have been lied to by the government, the bank, and their lawyer. They all lie as a precaution against inciting another American revolution. Everything is about commerce, money. It rules the world, and it rules your lives. In the small type of all fee simple deeds is the wording that specifies that the buyer is the tenant and not the owner. Your lawyer set up that little piece of fraud, never told you about it, and then charged you a fee for his services. And America keeps electing these lawyers to high political offices, and you wonder why your life is so much harder today than it was for your parents. Hell, they were just getting started. That's not all. In the small print of the deed is a poorly worded contract between you and the state government, wherein you consent to pay the property taxes on this deed and directs the state to send the tax notice in care of your name and address, and by signing all the deed transactions, you have agreed to another fraudulent debt. The tax debt guarantees that you can never own or reside on that property without paying. Whatever happened to that nest egg we were taught to believe in? Your lawyer set up that tax debt, too, and he receives a large percentage of your first tax bill for arranging that one. So I wanted to share that with you guys. That's from Judge Dale. Like I said before, it's a retired judge who, through the ranks, figured out, what exactly was going on, and he didn't agree with it, so he kind of blew the whistle on the information that he had. But, I mean, it just goes to show that, that's why they can do whatever they want, because, we allow it and we don't do our research, and, they pretty much have us by the balls. So, tell me what you guys think. I know it's been a minute since I put something out. I've been really busy. I appreciate you guys. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support the channel. I'll be dropping more from Judge Dale. There's endless information. If anybody wants these files that I have, I'll send them to you guys. If you guys want to go through them, there's tons of information. But just send me your email or whatever, and I'll send them to you. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. We own nothing. It's all based on our straw man. Our all capital letter name. We're all corporate fictions, and they can only prosecute the dead, but they can't prosecute the live flesh and blood man that we are, the spirit. And we need to get away from allowing the cabal to take hand and take us over. The truth is simple, guys. It's the lies that get complicated.